This was one of the most audacious, expensive, and technologically inconceivable secret operations in human history. Picture this. The Cold War is at its peak. The two superpowers, the USSR and the USA, have thousands of nuclear missiles aimed at each other, ready to incinerate the planet at a moment's notice. And in this atmosphere of total distrust and fear, a Soviet nuclear submarine, the K-129, lay resting in the icy abyss of the Pacific Ocean, 5 kilometers deep. On board were 3 ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads, and, more importantly, cipher machines and secret codes that could unlock the entire communication system of the Soviet submarine fleet. For American intelligence, this was the Holy Grail, the key to absolute military superiority. But how do you retrieve a needle, not from a haystack, but from the bottom of the world's deepest ocean? Any attempt to raise it would be immediately detected by the Soviet fleet, which would inevitably trigger World War III. The task seemed impossible, but within the CIA, a plan was born so insane and ambitious, it seemed ripped from the pages of a Hollywood blockbuster. A plan codenamed Project Azorian. This was an operation that defied the ocean, politics, and reality itself. The Americans decided to build a gigantic, one-of-a-kind ship, disguised as a deep-sea mining vessel, to lift an entire 2,000-ton submarine from the ocean floor, right under the noses of the KGB and Soviet satellites. This is a story of the greatest intelligence bluff, an incredible feat of engineering, and a secret the ocean kept for decades. Before we dive into the main story, we'd like to ask for a little support. A like and a subscription would be the best things we could ask for. Prepare to dive into an abyss of espionage and technology as we uncover the secrets of Project Azorian. It all began on March 8, 1968. On that day, the Soviet diesel-electric submarine K-1, on patrol in the North Pacific, failed to make its scheduled radio check-in and vanished without a trace. In the Soviet Union, the alarm was immediately raised. Dozens of ships and aircraft were scrambled for the search, but it was all in vain. The ocean knows how to keep its secrets. After scouring the presumed patrol area, the Soviet fleet found no oil slicks, no debris. Eventually, Moscow bitterly concluded that the submarine had been lost due to unknown causes and called off the search. But there was one thing they didn't know. The Americans were closely monitoring their futile efforts. U.S. naval intelligence possessed a unique acoustic surveillance system called SOSU, a network of hydrophones scattered across the ocean floor, capable of hearing almost everything that happened in its depths. Analyzing recordings made on the day the K-129 disappeared, American experts detected a single, muffled sound, consistent with an implosion. By triangulating data from several stations, they pinpointed the likely site of the disaster to within a few nautical miles. The area was far outside the zone the Russians had been searching. The USS Halibut, a special submarine equipped with the most advanced deep-sea exploration gear, was immediately dispatched. After weeks of methodically scanning the seabed with a towed vehicle equipped with cameras and sonar, at a depth of 5,000 meters, the operators saw what they were looking for on their screens. Lying on the bottom, broken into several pieces, was the K-129. It was a bombshell discovery. The Americans knew the exact location of the Soviet sub, and the Soviets did not. The CIA realized what an incredible opportunity had fallen into their laps to get their hands on the nuclear missiles, torpedoes, and most importantly, the codebooks and encryption equipment. Would mean gaining access to all the secrets of the Soviet Navy. It was like finding the keys to the Kremlin. But how could it be done? A depth of 5 kilometers meant crushing pressure, eternal darkness, and freezing cold. No country in the world had ever recovered anything larger than a small piece of wreckage from such a depth, and this was an entire submarine hull. The idea of raising the submarine hull was born in the depths of the CIA and was so fantastical that at first, no one believed it was possible. The plan was this: to build a massive ship equipped with a unique lifting mechanism. This ship would position itself over the K-129, lower a giant claw-like capture vehicle to the seabed, grasp the submarine's hull, and slowly raise it to the surface, pulling it directly into the ship through a special opening in its hull. To hide the operation's true purpose from Soviet satellites and spy ships that constantly patrolled the ocean, an ingenious cover story was developed. It was announced that the eccentric and reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes, known for his ambitious projects, had decided to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in a new technology, mining manganese nodules from the ocean floor. These were small mineral formations, rich in valuable metals, which were believed to be a future source of resources. The cover story was perfect. It explained both the construction of a unique vessel and its long-term presence at a single point in the middle of the Pacific. Howard Hughes, with his reputation as both a genius and a madman, was the perfect front. Thus began the most expensive construction project in the history of intelligence. The ship built for the project was named the Hughes Glomar Explorer. It wasn't just a vessel, it was a floating engineering complex. At 189 meters long, it was equipped with a giant derrick in the center, powerful engines, and a dynamic positioning system that allowed it to hold its position to within a few meters, despite wind and currents. But its main secret was the moon pool, a huge, openable bay in the central part of the hull and the giant claw, which the CIA internally called Clementine. This claw, weighing hundreds of tons, was fitted with hydraulic arms, cameras, and lights. It was to be lowered to the seafloor on a massive pipe string, assembled section by section on board. The entire operation was shrouded in such secrecy that even most of the engineers and workers who built the ship had no idea of its true purpose. They genuinely believed they were building the world's first deep-sea mining vessel. The project's cost was astronomical in today's money. It would be several $billion. It was a desperate gamble, with not only Cold War supremacy, but also the CIA's reputation on the line. In the summer of 1974, after years of preparation, the Hughes Glomar Explorer left port and headed for a point 1,500 miles northwest of the Hawaiian Islands. The cover story worked flawlessly. Soviet spy ships approached the Glomar Explorer several times, observed it, but seeing a vessel belonging to a Howard Hughes company and seemingly engaged in routine industrial activity, they sailed away, suspecting nothing. The most critical phase of the operation began. Day after day, section by section, the crew lowered the giant steel pipe string with the claw at its end. This was precision work at a 5-kilometer depth. Guided only by data from cameras and sonar, the operators had to maneuver the giant claw precisely over the hull of the sunken submarine. After several days of intense work, they succeeded. Clementine closed its steel talons around the forward section of the K-129. The lift began, slowly, meter by meter. The giant winch aboard the Glomar Explorer began reeling in the pipe string, raising its priceless and deadly cargo from the ocean floor. The crew held their breath, watching the instrument panels. The tension was immense. Everyone knew they were making history. And then, when it was about a mile and a half from the surface, the one thing everyone had feared most happened. There was a deafening crack. The sensors showed a sharp drop in the load. One of the giant claw's talons, unable to bear the colossal weight, had broken. The hull of the K-129, already damaged in the initial disaster, fractured. The larger aft section containing the missile silos and most of the encryption equipment broke away and plunged back into the abyss, this time for good. It was a devastating failure, but not a total one. The forward section of the submarine, about 40 meters long, remained in the claw's grip. This was the part they managed to raise into the Glomar Explorer's moon pool. The operation was complete. The ship set a course back to the United States, carrying the darkest trophy of the Cold War in its belly. So what did the Americans manage to find in the recovered section of the K-129? Despite the partial failure, the whole was priceless. Inside the forward compartment, the bodies of 6 Soviet submarines. They were buried at sea with full military honors, to the sound of the Soviet national anthem. The CIA even filmed the ceremony. 2 torpedoes with nuclear warheads were recovered. Their detailed analysis gave the Americans invaluable information about Soviet nuclear technology. But most importantly, some cryptographic documents and equipment were found. Although the most critical cipher machines were presumed to have gone down with the AFT section, the intelligence gathered was enough to deal a serious blow to the Soviet Navy's communication system. The CIA considered the operation a partial, but still significant success. They had proven that the impossible was possible. The world might never have known about this incredible story. But in 1975, a year after the operation, information about the secret project was leaked to the American press. Journalists from the Los Angeles Times investigated and published an article exposing the secret of Project Azorian. A massive scandal erupted. The CIA tried to stop the publication, citing national security, but it was too late. The story of how the Americans had raised a Soviet submarine from the ocean floor spread around the world. The Soviet Union, of course, issued a formal protest, calling the U.S. actions an act of state-sponsored piracy. But deep down, in the Kremlin and at Navy headquarters, there was a mix of dismay and admiration. They were stunned by the audacity and technological prowess of the Americans. They realized that the ocean was no longer a secure hiding place for their secrets. Project Azorian forever changed the rules of the game in undersea, and the Hughes Glomar Explorer, after completing its secret mission, worked for many more years as a conventional drilling ship until it was decommissioned and sent to the scrapyard. It never mined a single manganese. Its only hull was a secret, raised from a depth of 5 kilometers. A secret that became one of the most vivid and incredible chapters in the history of the Cold War. It was a story of how one nation, using all its intellectual and industrial might, performed a technological miracle to peer into the deepest secrets of its adversary, proving that in the great standoff between superpowers, nothing was impossible. Your support, through likes and subscriptions, is very important to us. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date and never miss our new videos.